Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to my second video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys a game that I played with the white pieces, and I opened e4. He went e6, going for the French, and I played knight to f3. He transposed into the Sicilian with c5, and I just played d4, striking in the center. He played pawn captures on d4. I played knight captures on d4. And he played bishop to c5, the Paulsen-Basman variation of the Sicilian. I went knight to b3 to attack his bishop, make him lose a tempo by forcing him to b6, which he does, and I played knight to c3. Here I could have also played c4 and then had a strong grip over the d5 square, so he can't push d5, and then after that play knight to c3, but I just went for it immediately. He played a6, and this a6 move is a really good move for him. In this position, now my knights can't jump to any of these squares because the pawn's guarding, the bishop's guarding, and the other pawn's guarding. So my knights are a little stuck here, and now I can't push c4 or even a3, b4. So I have to come up with a different idea. Here I go for queen to d6, and this is not the most precise move, but it definitely generates some action because I put pressure on the bishop, so the queen can't really move. I'm preventing him from castling at the moment, and overall I'm preventing him from pushing d5 and developing his light squared bishop and maybe his knight to d7 as well. I like this queen to d6 move. It puts a lot of pressure, although my queen is a little vulnerable there. He continued knight to c6. He just developed his knight to a different square. And I played bishop to d3, just continuing my own development. And in this position, he played bishop to c7. And bishop to c7 is the best move. He wants to kick away my queen, so he can push maybe d6 and develop his light squared bishop, and then may eventually play knight to f6 and castle. So here I played queen to c5, hoping that maybe he would repeat, play bishop to b6, for example, bishop to b6, and then this queen to g5 move is strong, offering a trade, but also if he doesn't want to trade, I threaten the g7 pawn. And in this position, I'm completely okay. The queens are off the board, and I'm ready to castle. My pieces are developed. This bishop is coming into the game. If he captures, it's coming to g5. So I enjoy this position. However, he instead went for knight g to e7. And after knight g to e7, he's getting ready to castle himself. But I go for queen to g5 anyways. And this queen to g5, it basically forces him to castle. It puts pressure on the g7 pawn. You can't really move this knight because the queen will be hanging. The queen will be hanging, and then the bishop will have to capture, and your pieces will be too underdeveloped. So he castles, and I castle. He goes f6, and f6 is... This is not a good move because, well, pushing f6 is just really never good, especially when the light squared bishop is on the board, because now this pawn is the only pawn that's preventing this bishop from having a strong diagonal, and your light squared bishop can't counter it because your pawn is still on b7 and your pawn is still on d7. So f6 is not the best. Probably better to kick my queen out would have been h6, or even going for d6 immediately, try to get the bishop into the game. However, f6 was played, and I played queen to h5. This queen to h5 is coming with ideas such as e5 and queen captures on h7. This will be deadly. In this position, again, he probably should have went for d6, but he played knight to g6. And he prevents against the double attack on his h7 pawn by blocking the bishop. And this is a slight inaccuracy. Again, better is probably just d6 and getting the bishop into the game. However, he played knight to g6, and in this position, I played f4. f4 is the strongest move, threatening f5. Although it opens up this diagonal for the bishop, I noticed this, and I thought after maybe something like bishop b6 and king to h1, my king's on a very protected square. There's no more threats. He has underdeveloped pieces. For example, this bishop is going nowhere. His rooks are undeveloped. His queen is still on d8, and I thought I would enjoy this position, so that's why I thought pushing f4 was okay. However, after f4, he didn't go for bishop b6 check. Instead, he went for e5. And e5 is not the strongest move, because e5 allows bishop to c4 check, and that puts this bishop on a very strong diagonal, slicing through and leaving the king basically on h8. In this position, f5 is what I played, and this is also a great move. It threatens the knight, and there's only really one good square, and it's knight to f4. And if knight to f4, bishop captures on f4, and after captures and captures, or sorry, you don't capture with the rook. You instead play something like bishop to c4. This pawn is going to be weak in the future, and although the bishop's protecting it, white would enjoy this position. However, after f5, knight g to e7 was played, and he defends his knight by moving it backwards. And this is not very good because it stifles the development of the queen, and you want your queen to help out with the defense of the 7th rank, but the knight blocks it. And in this position, bishop c4 is again a fine move. I didn't find bishop c4 in this position, but instead I found rook to f3. I'm attempting to do a rook lift and then going to threaten this pawn. And after maybe he pushes it, I will go bishop captures, sacrifice the bishop, and pick up 2 pawns, and then my attack will be very strong. In this, he plays queen to e8 and offering a queen trade. I definitely don't want to accept this, so I go back queen to h4. And again, he can play bishop b6 anytime he likes to push my king to h1, but he opts instead for h5. With the idea that if I capture, his queen is obviously going to capture, and I play rook to h3, threatening to capture. But I also realize in this position that I don't necessarily want to capture this pawn, because although I win a pawn, I don't have much of an attack left after the queens are off the board. In this position, he plays b5, preventing any future bishop to c4 ideas. And I play knight to e2. I'm thinking this might be coming, and I'm just being proactive. My goal is to maneuver the knight from e2 to g3 and then capturing the h5 pawn with the knight so that I can win the pawn and still have this strong battery along the h-file. He plays d6 finally, trying to get his light squared bishop into the game, but now it's probably too late after knight to g3, and he plays g5. G5 is a blunder. Instead, he should probably go something like rook to a7, even bishop to b6 check, but he played g5, and I captured it immediately with my bishop, sacrificing a piece. So if you capture this, the queen is too strong. You can't go to h8 or h7 because the rook will just capture the pawn. And after, either you block or you move your king. But if you block with the knight, then knight captures on h5 is coming, and eventually you're going to move this rook here. The bishop, you can't capture the knight yet because the bishop's attacking the rook, but after the rook moves here, you can recapture the knight, and this will be very strong. The king has no defenses, no pawns left. So after he doesn't play f captures on g5, and instead he goes for queen to f7. Queen to f7 is a completely losing move. Although his position was already not the strongest, it might have been holdable, but after queen to f7, he allows me to play knight captures on h5. And after knight captures on h5, the threat is obviously knight to f6 check, and for example, if he just plays something like bishop to b7, you have knight to f6 check, and the only moves are queen captures on f6, which leads to king h7 checkmate. Or after knight to f6 check and you play king to g7, again, queen to h7 is checkmate. So in this position, this knight cannot be captured. Probably to hold this, you just play a move like rook to d8, making room for the king to run away, and you'll lose a lot of material in the process, but that would allow you to continue the game. But in this position, he plays knight captures on f5. He's saying, I'm going to capture your queen if you don't do anything. And this idea, like, you can't really capture with the bishop anymore because you lose the queen. But he does offer his knight, and if the knight is captured, then all is well. But I played the most precise move, knight captures on f6, like we said, leaving the queen to hang. And if king to g7, queen to h7 is checkmate. But he played queen captures on f6, offering me the queen. But this can actually just be denied as I played queen to h7. This is also checkmate. So thank you guys for watching. In the future, I might do a video about some openings. I'm reading a lot into the Evans Gambit right now, and maybe I'll make a video about that in the future.